Hi, it's Kevin Annett, and I just written a letter to a guy called Jorge Bergoglio who likes to call himself Pope Francis. You probably know of him. I entitled the letter, Some Advice to a Desperate Pope. Dear Jorge, now I hope you don't mind me saying, but you've been acting kind of nuttier and nuttier as the months go by. I mean, recently, for example, you've instructed your bishops not to tell the police when priests rape children in your church. But just this last week, you also announced plans to investigate these same bishops if they follow your instructions. So which is it? I mean, apparently inspired by the sterling example from Canada of how the government and churches there have covered up their own slaughter of Indian children, you want to now set up your own tribunal. Gee, that's an impressive sounding word, isn't it? Tribunal. And this tribunal is going to investigate the Catholic Church, another self-examination by the criminals. But, in the process, you're creating such a muddle of contradiction that none of it makes any sense, not even to a Catholic. Now, this tribunal you envision aims to expose Catholic child abuse while not actually doing anything to stop it, besides employing the usual bromide of just shifting the criminal to some other bailiwick. And under your plan, neither can victims of the church actually sue the perpetrators, hold them legally accountable in any way, since, quite conveniently, you guys operate under your own laws and your own courts. Isn't that handy? That's kind of like the wolf saying to all the docile sheep, hey, you can trust me now. Of course, not being one, Catholic that is, I'm not party to that suspension of personal judgment and reason that seems to be required by any loyal member of your flock. So who knows, maybe your latest absurdity makes sense to that billion or so of you on the planet who somehow believe that God deals in cash and credit, and that all these invisible genies and saints can be influenced to usher you guys into that thing you called heaven. But theology aside, there is a limit. I can only hope there's a limit to human credulity and downright dumbness. Old Al Capone back in Chicago, who was, after all, one of your guys, he was a loyal dues-paying Catholic, he once told reporters that he planned to clean up all the crime in Chicago. Now, I don't think many of the folks back then actually believed Big Al when he said that, but the thing is, he owned all the politicians and all the money and all the muscle in town, so they had to believe him. He owned everything, just like you do. Well, that said, despite your crafted image of a sterling reformer, I haven't noticed you doing much reforming, Jorge. I mean, you haven't even nullified your standing Vatican policy known as Crimen Solicitanis, whereby everyone in your church, from cardinals right on down, must cover up child abuse and must not tell the police about it, or they face excommunication. Whoosh, right to hell. God hates a snitch, doesn't he? In fact, you've recently told your own Italian bishops that the police should never be included in any investigation of child abuse in the church. And who can forget that famous lie of yours spouted a few months ago in which you claimed that only 2% of Catholic clergy are active child rapists? Well, look, let me explain the real law to you, Jorge. Covering up child abuse and rape is as criminal an act as perpetrating it. So the figure isn't 2%, try 100%. And worse the luck for you, you're the head, the fiduciary head actually, of a syndicate criminal body whose stated policy is to aid and abet a crime against humanity. That makes you, well, quite shit out of luck, amigo. Of course, I'm no dummy. I know, this is Chicago after all, and I don't expect the cops to go and nab you. But that doesn't mean that you're not on the defensive and prone to exposing yourself. Like, look at how blatantly you're doing everything to hide all those after-hour pederasts in the organization, as well as conceal all those corpses that are routinely churned out by the Vatican Incorporated through its child trafficking and child sacrificial networks. And after all, child trafficking is something you know personally about, right, Jorge? But here's the thing. In your rashness to whitewash everything and cover your own ass for your love affair with the military junta in Argentina, you're forgetting a basic rule of war, and that is never give contradictory orders to your subordinates, and never disown your own actions. Otherwise, you're just sowing confusion in your own ranks. It is surprising that a top Jesuit like you seems to be disregarding such basics, schooled as you all are in the art of deception. Maybe you're just getting old. I don't know. But I do give you points for trying to steal our thunder by not only co-opting any Vatican crimes investigation, but using our lingo like that labeled tribunal. Very smart. I mean, your buddies in Canada have tried the same thing with a lot of success because, unfortunately, your average Canadian is about as streetwise as your standard Catholic pew sitter. But here's the thing, Cabron. When you open a dung heap, you can't control the stench that comes out. And everyone knows that an in-house inquiry of oneself is as genuine and legitimate as a trip to Lourdes. At the end of the day, Mr. Bergoglio, your latest grin and spin effort may have nothing at all to do with child abuse and everything to do with why you were hired, which was simply to distract. After all, you aren't officially the Pope as long as Joe the Rat keeps scurrying around inside the vat. You wander off on your own without bodyguards. You make policy changes that are instantly disavowed by the other Catholic cardinals. And guess what? You don't even live in the Vatican. There are two popes? Not likely. So which one of you is the real Antichrist anyway, Jorge? I'll leave that question to the theologians and to the lawyers. Regardless, your performance is beginning to wear a little bit thin. That knee-jerk Jesuit inside you keeps wanting to creep out. Like when you recently announced your plan to beatify. Is that like beautify? You're going to beatify an 18th century Catholic missionary in California who just happened to also terrorize and kill and enslave a lot of Indians. So if I were you, I'd go easy on that particular saint-making plan if I were you, Jorge, especially since you're going to America in the fall. Dummy, that's where all the protesters are. Anyway, forgetting about the Indians, which you so easily do, your image is otherwise pretty fine and good. What with that kindly grandfather visage and all those verbal gymnastics you perform to convince us that things are so different now on the Seven Hills. But you know, good looks alone guarantee nothing. Just ask Elvis. And there's that little matter of the financial insolvency of the Catholic Church and your frantic efforts to bail out the tottering Vatican Bank with a little help from your friends in Russia and China. Maybe that's why you're acting so befuddled. I mean, who wouldn't be distracted in your situation? Ultimately, though, Jorge, I wouldn't worry too much. You see, a good 85% of the human race just seems to need a beneficent fatherly figure who can do no wrong, despite all the blood on his hands. As George Carlin once said, there's no better bullshit operation in history than organized religion, and unfortunately the flock hasn't woken up to that truth yet. On the other hand, another good friend of mine, Abraham Lincoln, who you guys actually bumped off, old Abe once said, "You can't fool all of the people all of the time." Let me repeat that for you, Jorge. You can't fool all of the people all of the time. If I were you, I'd take that to heart. And I'll see you at the next exorcism. This is Kev, divinely yours.